When I first got involved in Buddhism, uh, I I read something on Zen, and basically, I just went to Japan to meditate on the basis of just a few paragraphs in a book, and I got into meditation in a Zen temple, and then I came back and I met the founder of the Triratna movement. His name was Sangharakshita. And so all the centers, Triratna centers, are in that same, as it were, school, you could say. So think of it as being, especially here in Britain and other West English-speaking countries, as Buddhism without any particularly Eastern cultural affinities. It's just Buddhism as best we can explained and communicated, in colloquial language. So I tend not to use the language of ancient India, for example, Pali or Sanskrit. I tend to try as much as possible keep it in English. So when I came back to Britain and I started practicing going on retreats with Sangharakshita, quite early on, he said something which really had a big impact on me. He was talking about the Buddha, who was a historical figure, and that the Buddha made lots of effort to grow and to develop, work on himself, to meditate. And at a certain point, he gained enlightenment. And, this figure here is symbolic of that moment, or that experience, of the transition from, working on yourself into enlightened experience, enlightened mind. But the thing that really struck me that Sangharakshita said was the enlightened mind doesn't stop growing and developing. Because I had thought it was, oh, you're enlightened, that's it, so you've done it. It's finished. No. He said, actually, the wisdom continues to clarify and to grow, and the compassion continues to deepen and to expand. It's a dynamic, vibrant experience for the Buddha, but it's different from the moment of enlightenment. Before enlightenment, you're working with what you could call ordinary mind, which we all have until we're enlightened, which is a sense of this and that, this helps, that doesn't help, me, you, this, I like this, I don't like that. It's sort of dualistic, that's one way of putting it. Your mind is separating things out, me, the world, and others. And then around the time of enlightenment, there's a different way of experiencing everything, if you can call it experience, not experiencing through the senses anymore, just through emotions. But that duality disappears. And there's a much more open dimension of experience. It's not fixed into me and you. And in Buddhism, the tradition are very, very, very careful about not being too precise about what that is. And the reason for that is the mind can just say, oh, I get that. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, of course, it's infinite divine, of course. And then, but in the tradition and the Buddha's communication was, no, that's not helpful to get an idea of what it is, in any precise conceptual way before you get there. What you have, though, what is useful is how you get there. So working on yourself, the skill sets, the qualities, the attitudes that help you to grow and to develop, get into your meditation to the point where you make a transition from the more relative, ordinary consciousness to enlightened consciousness, which then, in its own terms, keeps going. So I was just very struck by that. So that's how I wanted, in a way, to start, that it's a continuity in a way. So I wanted to go back to the imagination and how we use imagination. So we started this morning with using metaphoric questions, which is a way of almost like opening the door to our ability to function with a positive imagination, as opposed to fantasy, for example, which is not grounded in anything. It's just a fantasy of how you'd like things to be, but it's not real. So I think that almost the characteristic that we're being open to in a metaphorical use of imagination is that it's real, actually. The image that you get, maybe not initially, but later, it actually does fit. It is a reasonably, in its own terms, accurate depiction of what's happening. So in that way, you enter into your ability to recognize the difference between imagination, which is showing you something which is true and real, and when your imagination is showing you a scenario which is just not real, where you always win the argument, you always get the right person, you do things in your fantasy that actually in real life you couldn't do. So you start to get the difference between the ways that your mind uses imagination, and you start to choose for the more accurate way of having imagination, which is expressed by them, the skill of what we did, really, the metaphoric question. So there is a very interesting shift to imagination being expressed symbolically. So I've deliberately put these figures up because symbolically they represent important facets of both growth and development in the more ordinary sense and in the enlightened sense as well, that they are qualities of the enlightened mind as well. So I'm just going to very briefly explain them. So these three from the middle there, they're called the three primary bodhisattvas, or enlightenment beings. And they represent three primary qualities of the spiritual life, or growth and development and enlightenment. So Avalokiteshvara, who here only has 4 arms, so it's clearly a symbol rather than a human representation. So it's, you're in a different world when they start getting more arms or heads. I mean, one form of Avalokiteshvara has 1,000 arms and 11 heads. So then, you're really, I mean, I've never met anyone like that. So Avalokiteshvara represents compassion. So that, and compassion in the context of this theme, of the theme of growth and development, is how the compassion for people growing and developing, helping people to grow and develop, being compassionate to yourself when you're finding it difficult to grow and to develop, when you come up against, resistances or blockages in yourself, that you're compassionate with yourself. It's a really important quality, rather than just being really harsh and judgmental and you're a wally kind of attitude, which you might or might not have. But basically, the compassion has the wisdom that everyone has the potential to grow and to develop. That's the primary wisdom of that. No one is excluded. Everyone can grow. And that the compassion is that really hope and wish that everyone does what they need to do to grow and to develop. So there's two parts. There's the wisdom part. Yeah, everyone has the potential to grow. And the feeling as it part. Feeling isn't quite exactly the right word, but it's the best I can do at the moment. Of that, I really hope that people take this opportunity that they have now to grow and to develop. And that, encouragement and to do that and supportiveness of doing that is part of the compassion. So then, over there, is the figure called Vajrapani. And Vajrapani, that is the picture of a wrathful deity. And you know that you're in the realm of imagination, because you never see them, not even a dark night in Hackney. I don't think. Someone similar maybe, but not quite that. So you know that you're in archetypal realm here. And as a symbol or an archetype, it represents energy, motivation, breakthrough from the ordinary into enlightenment. And the symbolism of the flames are the breakthrough. It's almost like the velocity of it is burning up all kinds of hindrances. Oh, well done, Jenny. She should put some proper pictures up. Maybe, can I just turn this around? She's done it very nicely. Beautifully, look at that. I know, it's wow, isn't it? She's really done well. Can you see that? Thank you so much. You're a gem.
Did you say it's a picture of a wrathful what?
Deity.
Okay.
Figure.
One on the right.
Yeah, the one on the right. So that's in statutory form. It's that one. Yeah? So good, isn't it? Maybe let's keep it up for a little bit so you get a sense of it. So you've got the compassion, you've got the energy, and Manjushri, the one with the sword, and in the picture is just the statue is pretty similar, really. So it needs a little bit of explaining because there's so much of association of a martial or fighting association with swords that need explaining in this context. So the sword is a Vajra sword. You notice at the hilt it's got that little bit at the end. So that denotes it's all about wisdom and reality. It's not like, something you buy down the martial arts shop. This is to cut through delusive and illusory attitudes and ideas that you have. And it's a flaming sword as well. So it's part, in process, it's that part of you that goes, yeah, I think I'm a god. No, actually, I'm not. And that's the, or a goddess, sorry. That's the sword that cuts through that and says, no, I'm not a goddess, or I'm not a god. Yeah, it's just an idea. So that wisdom aspect of the sword is symbolic of a process of, is this real? Is this true? Is that belief I have right? No, it's not. It's that process of cutting through at deeper and deeper levels, untruths, basically, about how you are, how the world is, how things. And that happens in meditation, or can happen as a result of meditation, where you start to go into much clearer, more open, lucid states of mind. And when you ask yourself, what do I think? What's important? And something comes to mind. And then you ask yourself the question, is that really true? Because you're in that brighter, clearer, more open, less attached state of mind, the answer will come quite clearly. No, it's not true. And that's the sword cutting through again. So all of these figures actually emerge, or the qualities of these figures emerge more clearly in meditation. Once you, especially on retreat, hint, hint. Like the one in June. Was that a bit too blunt? No, it wasn't. So they emerge more when you're not so cluttered in your thinking. Because, we have lots of thinking in our ordinary everyday. Shall I do this? Shall I do that? What's that? Well, what happens on retreat when you do more meditation, perhaps at home, is that you get more space and more clarity to discern what's happening and whether it's true in real terms. So they are symbolic or archetypal forms of processes. Well, so then you can be inspired by the forms at different times. Go, I'm much more in that compassion or wrathful, breaking through experience. And you can start to relate to what they represent, but within your own experience. And as you relate to them, they become what they represent becomes more real. It's not just a picture, or an idea. You can go, this is what it's like to be truly seeing the potential of all beings growing and developing and really wanting them to grow. This is what it's like. Yeah, I get it. And I don't have to have 4 arms. I'm just going to check the time. Right. I put this figure up, which is it's more from the China, Japan traditions. Ksitigarbha, and he's a bodhisattva, so archetypal figure, but also in a way seen as human, rather, and based on an actual historical figure who basically would go and help anyone, anywhere with their situation, whether they were suffering or whether they were complacent and blasé. He would communicate with everyone. And in a way, it's an expression of the compassion of Avalokiteshvara. So this is an expression of communication of the ideals of growth and development in a very, thank you, Jenny. She's working hard today. You see that? And some of these Ksitigarbhas are exquisitely beautiful. When you see them in museums, or someone actually is lucky enough to have one, they can be really quite refined and communicate something incredibly beautiful of this kind of compassionate activity, communication, kindness in the face of people suffering or difficulties. And so, in a way, this is relevant to us in our relationship to people, how we are with people, not giving up or cutting them off, giving up on them or cutting off, but engaging as best we can from compassion and care, in the sense that everyone can grow and develop. So there is a transition from kickstarting one's imagination in the beginning of your meditation with metaphoric question to being open to the significance of symbolism and archetypes. And there's this doorway that you can enter into where you go, well, if I'm an archetype, you can see where this is going, can't you? If I'm an archetype, what kind of archetype am I like now? Now, you don't have to be big, blue, fat and ugly as an archetype. It can be more ordinary. You can be like the gardener is an archetype, tending the garden of your mind, for example. There's this wonderful image from American mythology called Johnny Appleseed, who, you're familiar with Johnny Appleseed? Yeah, it's a great image of this actual person during the Civil War, went all around the States planting apple trees. I mean, how great is that? You didn't even know about the eco atmosphere, but he becomes an archetype of planting seeds. Well, in that case, bits. My horticulture is not that great, huh?
Saplings.
Something, yeah.
Saplings.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. Planting saplings. But it becomes an expression of something that's actually happening. For example. So it's a very useful thing to ask yourself, and to be open to what emerges, saying, no, I want to be a wizard, but I'm not a wizard, I'm So it's the same process. You ask for the image or the quality, and then you have to deal with your preferences against that, let go your thoughts about that, and just come back and say, well, actually, you know, an irrigator is an important archetype, being a plumber. Are there any plumbers here? Being a plumber is an ordinary, everyday job, you could say, but as an archetype, it's quite amazing. Keeps water flowing, and of course, water here is symbolic of energy and movement and flow. So when there's leaks or blockages, the plumber archetype fixes them. So I think it doesn't have to be all lofty. It can be quite down to earth. Sometimes just for me, the archetype of the investigator or the detective has been quite an important archetype. Who did it? Who've done it? What's happening here? What is really going on here? What is the culprit in this mess? And it's but for me, it was when I had that, it was really an archetype, that was lived and real. So all of that comes really out of one needs to engage with one's imagination, and then a cosmic imagination, as moving from the ordinary into the transcendental, and getting a sense of that movement and how imagination helps you go beyond your personal limitations to something which is free and unlimited. That's it. That's my last line.